Welcome, everyone. This is Coaching in Session. My name is Michael Rearden, and I will be your mindset coach today. And today we're going to be talking about being a rebel or being a leader or being a follower. You might think, oh, being the leader is going to be the top dog. Okay, well, I thought so too. Because in the world that I have evolved myself around, leadership and followership is going to be basically the prime two candidates who you can become. Are you a leader or are you a follower? There has to be an in between. There has to be something better. Maybe there's probably something even worse than a follower. But the aspect of thinking about what we can look at in our life and what we can create. A lot of us just kind of go through the motions of life, and then we find ourselves on our deathbed and we wonder where life went. Did we truly get to live? And is a life where you do everything that you're told, you do everything what everyone is doing, is that a life that's true to you? It's a wonderful question because it's going to give you the insight that you might be looking for or that you might need to make some changes in your life. Because people don't change if everything is going good. If everything is going good, great, let's keep it up. Businesses, for example, if you're getting 15, 20, maybe 50% more every single month, great, we're doing good. They're not worried about, all right, we're negative 20, negative 50%, we need to make a change. So when things are going good in our life, we're not worried about making change. Let's keep the ball rolling. Maybe we can look at some things and we can say, well, this might be up and coming. We need to focus on this. We need to do this in order to stay relevant. Yes, those conversations are going to be there in the business, but if it ain't broke, don't fix it, they say. But the problem with that saying is, with that, time is always going to be fluctuating and mindsets are always going to be changing. Think of it as a certain style of clothing or a certain genre of music. When you go back to the 70s, you have your Motown, your funk, your soul music, your Earth, Wind, and Fire. Good music, right? Fast forward to the 90s, you got your hip hop, your Biggie, your Jay-Z, your Nas. Fast forward to 2020, you have your pop music. I know Beyonce was relevant before, but now Taylor Swift is basically, a powerhouse in the pop culture. Before it was Michael Jackson. Now we have a different dynamic of singers, of styles, of mindsets, because as time goes, things are going to change. The music we listen to, the clothes we wear, the cars we drive, we update ourselves. Just how we don't have rotary phones in our houses, we have cell phones. Most people don't even have home phones. And if you do have a home phone, it's probably because you're older and you don't know how to use a cell phone. That's my grandma. All right. I don't mean to throw her on the bus or anything, but hey, that's reality. But then there are going to be grandmas like my other grandma. She has a cell phone only. So it just depends on the person. Do you want to update? Think of it as firmware. Do we update our firmware? Or do we just stay in the same system that we have always been in? And today we're going to be having a wonderful conversation with a self-help author and a hypnotherapist, Joe Barnes. He's going to be helping us understand what is going on in the world, what is going on in our mind, and how to escape the system. Welcome, Joe Barnes, to Coaching in Session. How are you doing?
I'm good, thanks, Michael.
Today we're going to be having you on as a self-help author and a hypnotherapist. I love to have authors on because the journey of writing a book is not easy. It is an arduous task, but we want to instill our bits of wisdom into the world. That's going to be in the libraries, going to be in audiobooks, formats that's always going to be there, even when we're long gone, because we have something to share and you do have something to share. And that's why you're on today. In your own words, can you tell the world who you are, what you do, and how you help?
Okay, so I'm Joe Barnes. I'm the author of 4 self-help books. My most recently released is this one here, The Rebel Code. That got published right at the end of last year. Also been a hypnotherapist for almost 20 years. And combining those two, my sort of passion is to help people break free from, well, those who want to break free from conventional living and working jobs. I help them make that transition into a more passion-led life, a more authentic life, and hopefully building the life of their dreams.
So the Rebel Code is a book about getting people out of the, I guess you can say, the indoctrinated 9 to 5 system.
It is, but it's also about discovering that you're a rebel. The start of the book, I basically say there are 3 types of people living on the planet. You're either a leader, a follower, or a rebel. And the difficult thing for the rebel is that they may either be trying to force themselves to be a leader. You know, there are so many books on leadership out there and about being an alpha, etc. And they may be trying to do that, and they're sort of trying to fit a square peg into a round hole. The other alternative is they may just think, God, it'd be much easier if I just follow and go along with what everybody else is doing. So they're either trying to be a leader or a follower. When they don't realize is they're actually a rebel. And there is a path for rebels. There doesn't oftentimes seem like there is a path for rebels. Sometimes it feels you're a bit of a misfit and there's no place for you in the world. But my book is aimed to show them how they can create a place for themselves in the world and embrace their rebel personality. I may have forgotten your initial question there, but it's quite important to explain that there are those 3 personalities. And when you discover you're a rebel, there are certain guidelines I offer as how to make the most of your life as a rebel.
And so you don't have to worry about answering my questions because the questions I give are very vague. I do it on purpose because I don't like to have a conversation that's going to be the same. Like, for example, we have a lot of guests come on the podcast. And if someone is listening to a guest, let's say the guest is Megan, and then Joe comes after, right? They don't want to listen to the same questions. They don't want to listen to the same conversation. They want something unique. Every episode has to be special and magical. And today I already know that we're going to have a wonderful episode because the Rebel Code is something that is going to be an interesting conversation because, as you said, there's 3 types of people: leaders, followers, and rebels. And I want to get into the aspect of the rebel because is the rebel someone who just kind of treads their own way, F society, says, I'm going to do my own thing, and they don't care what people think, say, or do to them? They already know they are 100% solidified in who they are and who they're becoming.
I think potentially, but I don't think I make a distinction in the book between successful rebels and rebels who happen to be struggling. And I know from my own experience, I was a struggling rebel. And I think there are probably more struggling rebels than there are successful rebels. Yeah, there is that whole, tendency to think, F society. But at the same time, it's hard to do that. It's very easy just to think it in your head, but to actually live a life congruent with that ideal. Are you really going to break free and you're not going to have an employed job? You're not going to work in the corporate world. You're going to do your own thing. Well, that's tough. Are you really going to break free in terms of maybe you're not going to follow the societal norms as well? Maybe you're not going to socialize like everybody else does. Maybe you don't believe, maybe, for example, you don't believe in marriage, etc. Are you really going to have the strength to stand for your conviction? It's not as easy as just saying, F society. I think there is a tendency for rebels to feel that way, but to truly live a happy and authentic life, they have to actually take action on that feeling. And that's really what I feel the guidance from my book comes in.
When we look at the 3, right, followers is pretty easy to distinguish. But when we look at the comparison between leader and rebel, what's the difference in action there?
So the leader wants to be on top, but they want to be on top within the system. So there's a clear hierarchy, power structure, and they want to exploit that. They want to be the ones calling the shots. Now, the rebel may want to be on top. They may want to be doing great things, but they don't want to do it within the structure of that system. They want to go their own way. So I say that the 3 different personality types have 3 different roles in the world. The leader's role is to enforce the status quo. The follower's role is simply to administer it, carry it out, obey it. The rebel's role is to challenge the status quo. And if they're successful, they challenge it, they change the whole paradigm, and everything starts all over again. They create a new paradigm, which inevitably the leaders end up ruling, the followers end up following, and the new rebels that come along say, hey, we're sick of this. We want to create something new again. And that's how humanity advances throughout the centuries, throughout the millennium. But my point now, and why I feel the book is poignant now, is I feel we're stagnating. I think there's too much conformity in society, too much materialism, superficiality. We need our rebels to come forward and facilitate some kind of change. And that's why I felt the right time to write the book.
And the question I want to lead next to is, as you said, like we're in a world where we're kind of stuck, right? We're stagnated. Do you find that rebels are not being created more so today than maybe 50 years ago? Because we have everything given to us from our social media, our news, everything is telling us what to do versus us deciding what we would like to do.
Don't know is the answer. I think in likelihood there's probably just as many rebels, but I think they're more afraid to come forwards now because, as you mentioned, social media is a big thing. We've got to be seen. We want to fit in. We want to be popular. We don't want to, not many people. There's a Japanese book, I think, called Having the Courage to be Disliked. Not many people have the courage to go their own way, to be disliked, especially in a social media driven world. They want to be seen as popular, as liked, as cool. And it's crazy how cool is kind of defined in a way as fitting in. So I think the rebels are out there, but the external forces are so strong for us to conform to go along with what everybody else is doing, what everybody else is saying. You see so much virtue signaling in society now as well. Everybody's got to try and demonstrate that they're a good person all the time. That can be quite hard to fight against. So I think for those reasons, the rebels are being silenced, and they may have rebellious thoughts, but they're not acting on it in their lives.
Do you think, or have you found that people have an alignment in their life? For example, some people are born to be leaders, some people are born to be followers, some people are born to be rebels. And if they are born for that, can they make a change? So if they're a leader, can they be a rebel? Or if they're a rebel, can they be a follower? I think followers basically the bottom level where everyone can conform to being a follower quite easily. But when it comes to leadership and maybe even being a rebel or a successful rebel, it will require a bit more work. Follower might be the base, but then, the potential to be a leader or a rebel, does everyone have that within them?
I think so, and to varying degrees. It's a self-help book. I didn't want to make the whole entire book discussing the sort of dichotomy between the levels. I wanted to simplify it. So I came up with 3 personality types. But yes, I may be predominantly a rebel, but I may have some leadership qualities within me. At times I may follow. It's not a case that one person is just one thing. So to answer your question, yes, I think you can have follower tendencies, but inside you there might also be a rebel. And you might feel, for example, after reading this book or seeing something else, watching some documentary or whatever it is that inspires you, you may feel, I need to let that rebellious side out. And I think a good example of exactly what you're talking about is someone like Nelson Mandela, South African president. He was a rebel initially. He challenged the system. But guess what? Through being successful, he changed the whole paradigm, ended up leading. So he went from rebel to leader. But of course, even while he was a leader, he probably was still a little bit of a rebel. And even while he was a rebel, he was still a leader. It's fluid. I don't think it's just set in 3 different categories.
No, yeah, I definitely agree with that. It's just an interesting concept because if you think about like all the greatest motivational speakers in the world, they only say you are a leader or you're a follower. But then to give another aspect of rebel is very interesting because in our world today, we have a lot of people that would like to consider themselves rebels, but then again, they're just following like-minded individuals too. In a sense, they're not necessarily willing to go down a path by themselves. And I'm not saying that every rebel is by themselves, like they're the lone warriors, but it's more of the mindset because I'm sure you're probably familiar with the saying, sold your soul. So, like, you might be a person that is going down this path and you're righteous and you're doing all the things that you feel is appropriate for yourself, the world, the family, whoever. But then someone says, "Hey, we want you to, work for our company. We're going to pay you X amount of money." The money can kind of cloud ourselves. So, in a sense, we give up our rebellion, maybe become the leader for that company, the spokesperson, and we are the leader talking to all the followers. I was just thinking about so many different dynamics that could happen from a rebel standpoint, because it's almost like the in between, but it's almost like a separate category, if that even makes sense. It's a very interesting topic.
I think exactly as you point out, these motivational speakers or business gurus, whatever it might be, tend to only speak in terms of leaders and followers. And I just felt that didn't cover it all. I felt there are people who don't fit neatly into those categories. And not everybody wants to be a leader in the sense that leading within the system. Some people want to shake things up. I did feel there was a space to express that.
And I wanted to get into, because you've been in this field for a long time, 4 books and 20 years as a hypnotherapist. We talk about some of the changes and some of the difference that you have seen from maybe when you begun your work to now where we are today?
In terms of, well,
mindset of individuals.
I began my work as a hypnotherapist before I was an author. And I think people are more open to hypnotherapy now, to the personal development world. I mean, they were back then as well. For example, Anthony Robbins was very popular back then. But I think the rise of the internet, the advent of YouTube and social media has just exploded the personal development space. I don't know if you look at what it's valued at now compared to what it was valued at 20 years ago. I'm sure it's 2, 3, 4 times the size that it was. So I think people are more and more open to how they can change themselves. And I think that's a really good thing, because otherwise you do tend to feel a bit stuck. You don't feel, I think personal development teaches you that you have some ability to influence your life, that you can shape your reality. Whereas society teaches you that you've just got to fit in. You've got to find your place, fit in. If you don't like it, well, that doesn't really matter. You've just got to survive, pay your bills, support your family, and that's that. Whereas personal development presents you with this exciting option of actually being able to manifest and create your own reality. So I've always seen personal development as a little bit rebellious against the system and society, because it's saying, hey, you can have the life that you want. Whereas society says, no, you've just got to fit in and take what's given to you and be happy for it. That's what attracted me to personal development in the first place, even before I ever thought of, concept of rebels, etc., was this idea. The first ever time somebody told me I could have what I wanted from my life was a book. Was a book called The Power of Your Subconscious Mind. Prior to that, I'd spent 22 years on this planet, and not a single individual, including my parents, teachers, ever said to me, yeah, go for your dreams. You can create a life you love. It was always, you just got to do what other people tell you. You've just got to try and fit in, etc. I just hope, in terms of going back to your question about mindset shift, I would hope that more people now are waking up to this idea that we have some power to shape and create our reality.
Yeah, it is going to be an industry that's going to continue to grow easily for the next 70 years. That's just a minimum that I have found. Because if we look at our education system, and we're all, I guess, a part of that, we don't necessarily have teachers that are going to say you could be anything you want, right? They're just going to be going in there maybe for a paycheck to teach a curriculum. Maybe they love their job, right? But there's going to be limits that are going to be given to us. There's going to be fears that we develop from schools, from our Fs that we get on our report cards, or our Ds, or our pink slips if we're bad or we misbehave. We learn limits, whether it be intentionally or unintentionally, we learn them. And if we fast forward from when we are in pre-K, kindergarten, and now we're 18, we're graduating high school, how many of those students do you think are prepared for the world? Unless their parents were involved, helping them along the way, giving them what they needed, almost none. That means what's going to happen is many of these students are going to seek education outside of the typical education patterns that they would go through, K to 12, and then maybe college. A lot of people are going into the self-help world, reading books, getting coaches, seeking therapy. That right there is going to help them go in their mind and to find the answers that were never presented to them because they were never told to look at them. Do you find that today a lot of people come to you with no purpose, no drive, no aspirations for more in their life?
Yes, but they come to me looking for that.
Exactly.
Not a case of they want it. They believe there's got to be something out there better than what they've been told reality is. That's my books, my book writing side of things and my online coaching. With hypnotherapy, people come to me with specific issues. They want to stop smoking, or they want to lose weight, or they have health anxiety, etc. But yes, my wider work with my books, it's sometimes having an inkling of what the purpose is, but not knowing how to take the steps to get there. I think that's a first step. You can feel lost in that position. You can feel that you can never be free to do the things you want, but at least you realize that there could be something out there. At least you're not just a follower or a robot stuck in the system and not questioning anything. I think asking those questions in itself is the first step to finding something, being able to create a greater life.
So the first question we need to be asking ourselves is there something else out there? Or I know there's something else out there for me. How would they begin to proceed after that?
Well, I write about this a lot in all of my books, and it's also I think it's the second step in the Rebel Code, and that is I advise rebels to do it, but to be honest, I advise anyone to do it, even if you don't resonate with the rebel personality type. I say be guided by your heart when making major life decisions. You have to learn to connect with your heart and your intuition. You see, the system that we live in, society, teaches us to make decisions based on what makes sense, based on logic. And we've got to reason things out. What's going to make us the most money? What's going to be the best for our prospects in terms of status, in terms of who we might be able to marry, etc. And having a life within society. That's all it's all up here, that kind of decision making. To really create the life of your dreams, you have to shift your decision making down here and start to ask the questions about what you are passionate about, what is driving you deep in your soul. And that may lead you in a crazy direction, a really difficult direction. It's not a case of, oh, wow, just because I'm inspired about this, it's all going to be easy from here. I think that was a little bit of a misconception I had, maybe a lie is too strong a word, that the self-help world taught me is follow your heart and everything's going to be okay. It's not the case. You're probably going to walk a harder path than if you just do what everybody else does and do what makes sense. I still think follow your heart is great advice, and I still think you have to do it, but it often leads you into conflict with those people who don't follow their hearts and a system which isn't set up that way. But in answer to your question, you've got to start making heart-based decisions. That's the first step to really uncovering your purpose and discovering what you're here to do with your life.
We talked about the system. I know other people refer it to as the matrix, society. Is there a future where all of that changes and people get to live a life according to what they want?
I hope so. I think the more people that break out of, we can call it the matrix, it's an analogy. I was actually the first one to start saying that. I was saying that in 2012. I'm just not as popular as Andrew Tate or some of the other people who start using that word. But I wrote a book called Screw the System back in 2012, had a matrix design cover, and I talked about exactly that stuff. But anyway, I hope people do, and you can only hope by if you do it and you're successful, then other people see that it's possible, then that hopefully inspires more people to do it, because I think we need that. I think we need people realizing that I can do what I want with my life. I don't just have to accept what's given to me. I think that's a really important thing for any person to understand. Let's hope that we are moving in that direction.
There's the idea of creating people who are just more docile, who don't fight back, who don't implement action in their life. And the example, I've talked about this before, what they do to domesticate sheep is any sheep that is dominant, assertive, attacks, they would kill it. And they would only breed sheep that would listen, were gentle, would run away, like they're afraid. That was inbred into them. And in our society, it's almost like the mentality of having to go into that 9-to-5 rat race type of thing or mentality is inbred into us. How can a person that has been given a hand of, well, my mom did it, my dad did it, everyone else is doing it, I want to be accepted, so I should do it too. And I know we talked about it briefly, but I really want to get into this because that peer acceptance is so big. And why would someone walk away from the system if it's going to outcast them initially?
I guess it's because something inside of you knows that it's not for you, that that life of conformity is crushing you, it's killing you. The other option is not super appealing, but it is appealing because it's inspiring to you and it's about following your heart, but at the same time it's difficult. And that difficulty, as you mentioned, of turning away from the crowd, of perhaps for a period of time experiencing a little bit of isolation is very scary for a lot of people. And I have sympathy. I know it's not easy to do that because ultimately you get the big prize. If you can stay the course, if you can be true to your heart and work in the direction of your dreams and what you're passionate about, and finally create and shape a life where you do get to live the life you want, then you get the biggest prize of all. I say in my book, that a typical leader's life could be a 9 or an 8 out of 10. A typical follower's life could range between 7 and 4 out of 10. A rebel can be down at a 3 or a 2 out of 10, but they also have the potential to hit 10 out of 10. And then the only ones who can get to 10 out of 10, because they're the only ones who have the courage to listen and stay true to their heart. And then if they're successful, build and live this absolutely amazing life, the life of their dreams. You see examples of people doing that. Are they, you don't know whether they're entirely authentic because you're not living their lives, but maybe you imagine that these great people who have triumphed against all the odds are living at a level above most other people. So it's all or nothing sometimes with the rebel, I think. And if you're of that mindset, then it's worth playing. It's worth facing all those challenges. It's worth facing the isolation. If at the end of the day, you are going to get to experience life's greatest prize.
It's like you have to live on the dangerous side because you might be one of those unsuccessful rebels and you might be that big prize winner rebel where you get that 10. And it is going to be a gamble for some people, but they do have to figure out if they want to do the work, I think. Because if they just envision that big prize, but they are, doing all the follower tendencies of just going to the 9 to 5 rat race, getting a paycheck, not doing anything to elevate themselves, then of course they're going to be in that, probably 4 to 7 range, as you said. This right here brings into the question of the isolation aspect that you mentioned. And this is very vague because I'm going to tie it in. There was an actor, I forget his name. He played a villain or something. I forget the name of the villain. Venom. Ed Hardy or something?
Tom Hardy.
Tom Hardy. Thank you. Tom Hardy. He said in a quote or, like interview, he says, being alone is addicting because you get used to it, but it's also powerful. So that isolation can create a power, but then it can also be an addictive aspect where you just want to stay by yourself. When we think of some of the greatest inventors, some of the scientists in the world, they're very secluded, but they're great minds. Do you find that rebels have those minds also?
I would think so. I think it's a double-edged sword because I think every personality type, and I say this in my book, leader, follower, rebel, we all need connection. We're all human at the end of the day. But there are great things that can occur through isolation. I think the writer Bukowski, was it Charles Bukowski? He's got a poem that he wrote, and it's about the tough life that everybody trying to forge a path on their own must face. He worked at a post office for something like 20, 30 years and kept failing at his dream to be a writer. He eventually succeeded in his 50s. And he wrote this brilliant poem called Go All the Way. That's it. It's about how you've got to go all the way in life. And he said isolation is a gift. It sort of speaks to your point that when you're isolated, you haven't got as many distractions. You haven't got negative people dragging you down. You haven't got irrelevant stuff going on in your life. You're free to focus 100% on what matters to you. But at the same time, I do think you need to balance that with some kind of connection. Otherwise, it could, that isolation in some sense is a gift, but it's also a curse, because if you're not spending enough time with other people, you can lose your humanity a little bit. So I think any would-be rebel any rebel out there has got to be careful when it comes to isolation. It can give you great power, but you must balance it as well to make sure you don't become too detached.
I loved our conversation today because the rebel code was not something I ever thought about. Like, think of it as like if you do something in your life and you're really good at it, but you don't necessarily think of it as a profession until you get a mentor or coach or someone in your life saying, hey, you're really good at that. Like, you should do that for the rest of your life. Like, you'll make millions of dollars. It was almost like that because I like to think of myself not so much as a leader, alpha and stuff like that. Like, that doesn't really seem appeasing to me. But then I'm definitely not a follower. I know that 100%. Rebel is definitely an enticing aspect because I hear it all the time from my mom and my sister. They're like, why you got to be a rebel? And it's just so interesting. So I'm definitely going to be checking out your book, The Rebel Code. I think it's going to give me so much more insight on the mindset of a rebel, because even though I've been labeled it, I have never really looked at it in the sense of, am I a rebel? Am I someone who's going against it? I just thought of it as a natural being, a natural place. But again, loved our conversation. As we begin to wrap up, I would love to get some final words from you and then for you to tell the audience where they can find you.
Great. Yeah, sure. Well, check out my website. It's www.escapethesystemnow.com. So you can read my blog there. You can read about my other books there. And basically, as I mentioned, just take a look at my new book, The Rebel Code. For the listeners of your podcast, Michael, I'm going to reduce the price to just $1 for the electronic version. I can't do it for the paperback, but $1 for the electronic version for 48 hours. I don't know when this is going live, but whenever it is, I'll make sure to reduce the price. So if you are watching this now, shortly after it's aired, then you can pick it up for just $1. I'll send you a link. Those are the best two places to get hold of me. If you want to follow me on Instagram, it's Escape the System 19. Always happy to hear from readers. If you want to just send me an email, if you have any questions, any feedback on what I've discussed today, or whether you read the book and want to talk about it a little further, I'm always happy to hear from my readers. So please do get in touch.
Perfect. And I will make it easy for everyone. All of the links, including the book, will be in the description box below so people can check you out, learn more about what you're doing. And then I just love the aspect of escape the system. It's almost like an adventure. It's just like, can we do it or can we not? And in our life today, we do have to test our bounds because we have been limits for so long. And many people have forgotten their true power, what they can accomplish, what they can do. And I just love the aspect of self-help. What I do is self-help, I guess. But, helping people get into the mindset, getting into the frame that they can change their life. So I want to thank you so much, Joe, for coming on, talking about your work, and then helping people escape the system. All right, everyone. I'd like to thank you so much for watching that interview with Joe Barnes and myself. As you can see, I was asking a lot of questions about this rebel mindset because I don't know if I'm a rebel or not. And I might be a rebel thinking about it. I don't necessarily like this system, but then I'm not over here saying, beat the system, defeat the system. I'm not into whole movements like the BLM and the Black Panthers and all of this nonsense stuff. I'm like, if I want to make some changes, I make some changes. And I don't care if I'm doing it by myself. And I remember when I was speaking to my wife, this is probably like early on. I don't even know what month it was, but I remember I was speaking with her. I was like, if you want to be a person, just that does things in life, you have a couple of options in a way to do it. You can find like-minded individuals and you can, be together and you can create something together with a unity mindset and collaboration. You can just kind of, follow the system and then whatever you get. One is going to be an aspect of working together, not following the system. You're not a follower. You are a leader of multiple people. And then The follower aspect is you basically have no say in the matter. You just kind of do what you're told, just do everything. But then I presented a way of you can be on a desert island and you get to choose exactly what's around you. If you don't like a person, get rid of them. If you don't like a situation, change it. This right here might have been the rebel mindset. This right here might have been the rebel frame that we have spoken about today. But yet, we have to dive deeper. And I'm excited to read his book, The Rebel Code, because this right here is going to give me a clearer understanding of my mindset. And I am a mindset coach. Yes, I understand. I can help people with their mindset, I can help people with their families, I can help people with their relationships, their health and their fitness. I can help you all around. What I will say is I have adapted a life of learning. I'm not going to just be that old guy that's 70 years old that is not relatable to what's current and trending. Because when I get, my, 15, 16, 70-year-old clients come in because their parents say, this person's on the wrong path, their child is on the wrong path. And I'm like, are they really on the wrong path, or are they just not on the path that you want for them? And sure enough, they are just not on the path that their parents can understand because they are thinking more old school. Just how we talked about generational mindsets, that old school way of thinking is not current to the current way of thinking. So we do have to be relatable and we do have to think in the current sense. But then we also have to always have the air of, well, what do you truly want? Do you want what someone else has or someone else has attained? Does that seem like something good to you? Is that going to lead to the life that you want? Are you just going to be someone who's just passive and accept whatever you get? There are people like that because maybe they haven't been told what they can accomplish, what they can do in their life, what they will do in their life. And so they just settle for whatever they get. I like to call it the scraps. They get the scraps, whatever, the followers is like, yeah, like whatever I get, I get. Same people who said, oh, let's get back to normal. What's normal? Normal was what, going to 9 to 5 where you were unhappy and then now you're afraid and you would rather be unhappy than afraid. It was an interesting time when people were saying, let's get back to normal. What was normal? Not succeeding, not living the life of your dreams, the person that you were destined to be, not attaining that person or reaching that person. That was normal. And you can understand why mindset is so important now. People are selling themselves short. You don't know your value. You don't know how powerful you are. You don't know what you can accomplish. And it's because people haven't told you. It's because you have been told a set of limiting beliefs and you have to get rid of them. In a sense, you have to be a rebel, but how can you be successful? There's many steps that you can take. I encourage everyone to immerse yourself in self-help, to find yourself mentors, and to find yourself individuals that can help you along the way, the process, similar to what Joe does. He can help you get rid of habits and, relinquish those bad patterns in your life, but then he can also instill and create good stuff into your life. And that's what you need. You need people who are going to give you the good, also get rid of the bad, but to give you the good, because that is what we need in our life. We need the good. We need to get away from what everyone else is having in the sense of they have nothing. They're struggling. They're not prospering. They're trying to survive. Every day is a day full of stress, anxiety, and uncertainty. And you have to ask yourself, do you want to live a life like that? Do you want to be 65 and worried about retirement? I don't know. Do you want to be someone who doesn't create a family that you can love and cherish and connect with? I don't know. Our mindsets are in a very interesting place. And I use the word interesting loosely. Interesting can be like, oh, that's interesting, good. And that it could be, that's interesting, bad. I'm going to lean more on the side of interesting, bad, because we need to make some changes if we want to have a life that we can be truly proud of. Following the regime, following the system, following what you have been told to do is not going to lead to the life that you truly desire and you want. You might think you want these things, but for the people who have finally achieved success, greatness, money, wealth, monetary wealth, materialistic goods. They're not happy. They're not fulfilled. I can't tell you how many clients that I have that have millions of dollars in the bank, and they're not happy. They're not fulfilled. They have all of these bad habits. Why? Because they're not doing something that's true to them. They have not done the work. They have become leaders. Yes. They have become wealthy. Yes. But fulfillment is not necessarily there. They question it quite frequently. And they ask, should I give it all up? I'm going to say that if you have created something good in your life, don't give it up. Learn how to incorporate what you have done good into what you're trying to create now. You can't reverse time. So if you were a person that sacrificed family, be there today for them. If you were a person that sacrificed your health, be a person that gets yourself into the best shape of your life. It seems like, well, it's too late. No. It's never too late. As long as you're alive, as long as you're able to make some changes. If you're listening to this, you're alive. You are here. You have an opportunity to change. So I encourage everyone to check out the books that Joe has written, to check out his work on his website, to follow him on social media. A great, wonderful soul who's going to be helping people become a better version of themselves. It might not be the typical normal from following the system and doing everything that you're supposed to do, getting a college degree. It's going to be something that's going to be true and unique to yourself. And as always, if you need any more help, RevenConcepts.com will be more than happy to assist you on that journey to the best you possible. My name is Michael Rearden. I'm a mindset coach. If you have any questions, email me coachinginsession@gmail.com, and I will see everyone on the next episode of Coaching in Session. Until then, everyone, take care.